Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother narcissed school and passed away 4 months ago. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul and voice your concerns to please keep Bradley here in these United States at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. I have two return guests back on. I have Mark and Terri Stemann. They are the founders of Let Our Children Go. And the last time they were on was February 28th, 2023, season 4, episode 47, where we talked about CPS and the serious threat of Title IV. And I've got them back on because we're going to discuss a couple more topics, and they're going to give us updates on their case and what has been going on with that, along with deprivation of rights and qualified immunity, and why attorneys won't take our cases. So I welcome you back, Mark and Terri. How are you?
Hello, Marianne.
Right.
It's great to be back with you and
Yeah.
everyone in your fight audience. Thank you for hosting us again for an update. Talk about those additional things you just mentioned there. It's going to be an exciting conversation. We're looking
Yes.
forward to it.
Yeah, it will be. And what we don't cover, I always tell my guests, if whatever we don't cover, we'll be back. So,
Yeah. Well, last time we were with you, we got into talking a little bit about what happened to us and our family. And, we are at the 7-year point on this journey. And, it's been a long, hard slug fest, so to speak. And
mhm,
we're still fighting. We're going to continue to fight the good fight because what's at stake for us and for um, everyone who's in the midst of this mess, and even those who are not yet in it, there's a very real threat out there across the country, every state, because what we talked a little bit about last time, where the incentive is they have to take more kids. And we have been in contact with some whistleblowers who have been in the system, and one of the things that they're coming out and talking about is that they have quotas, to take kids, and so it just kind of points to the overall criminality of what we know is happening within the system, and so for people who don't yet know what's going on, the child entitled for money theft racket and the redistribution of our children and our money and the money laundering and all of the other abuses that many people I know in your audience are probably familiar with, and that for those who don't know is extremely destructive. And so we talked a little bit about our case, and we are happy to report that many people within your fine audience have reached out to us and encouraged us to continue to promote the previous interview we did with you because they felt like it went really well. So we're really encouraged by that. We thank the people who have reached out to connect with us, and so we're excited about where we're going and what's happening. And we just want to encourage everyone else out there who has not yet connected with us that we would like you to do that, because we have strength and power in numbers, and we do feel like we have a vision for accomplishing our objective, but it's going to involve everyone. We need all hands on deck in this fight. And we talked a little bit in the pregame, Marianne, about that. Just I've taken in a couple of the other interviews you've done, and many of these stories are so egregious, and there's just a heinous violation of so many things, from our right to parent our children, or at least to have like equal parenting for those who are involved in parental alienation cases. But one thing that we've seen in common to all of us is the deprivations of our constitutional rights at the state and federal level.
mhm,
And we would like to encourage people to take a good hard look at that common thread of unites us all. And not to diminish the egregious things that people are experiencing, because there needs to be justice and remedy for those things. But if we can join together on what is common to all of us, and what's happening is the gross deprivations of our rights, that if we have our rights, we're going to have our children. We're going to have access to our children. And we're going to have justice, and we're going to have remedy, all the things that many of us are being denied. And so, we are happy to help anyone that we can. And, we are limited. So, I mean, it does take time for us to respond to people, just because we're in the midst of, growing this thing. And we do need more helpers. So anyone who wants to, come on in and help out, we would welcome you to do that. And what we're looking to do is to talk a little bit more about our organizations and our mission, and Let Our Children Go and the Heritage and Freedom Coalition. Terri oversees the Let Our Children Go aspect, but we kind of, we each take care of both organizations. But so she's the primary for that, and she reaches out to people, but I also write to people through that. So, but we will respond if people reach out to us. And what we're looking to do is to join people together in their locales. There are words that we often hear from people about local action for national impact. General Mike Flynn talks a lot about that in respect to what we can do locally. And so our vision is that we can establish local chapters in our counties, because what's happening to us, parents, and our children who are being stolen from us, and the lack of equal protection in many other cases, and the things we talked about is happening in just about every county and just about every state. And you mentioned the immunity, but so we all have a stake where we're at, and what we're trying to do is to build the numbers, and then to grow a true grassroots operation joined to our organizations, to where when we show up at our representatives or to our criminal justice channels, they find a way to just brush us off. But our objective is that we want to proceed peacefully, but we want to show up. We want to build trust and be a good neighbor to our fellow Americans. And because many of us are hurting, and a lot of people, because of their pain, we find that there is a certain level of trust building that has to happen. And so we want to help facilitate that people don't need to be afraid, and that if we can join together and find those securities among each other, and then build those healthy relationships and those chapters across the country, that we can build an operation where when we do show up, that we'll have the numbers, that they won't be able to just brush us off, and that we will insist that they uphold the charter for which we pay them in accordance with our Constitution, and all of the other things that are pursuant to that, to ensure that we have justice, remedy, and that they stop taking our kids like this, where we're not convicted of a crime, and that we're given lawful due process. And so if we have all those things, we're not going to see the destructive impact that's happening across the country in so many different ways. And so we want to be that support system. We want to be there for people to help them in the midst of their pain in any way that we can, connect them with people, and then to grow that out across the country. And then we're still looking for that attorney. We're still looking for an attorney out there who's willing to step up to the plate and be willing to take this on, whether it be an individual case somewhere, or maybe a class action with a group of people, because there are people affected across the entire country, and so many of us have similar outcomes. And it is the rare exception where people do get their kids back. Some people do, but it's not the norm like one would think. And so whether people choose to comply with services or whether they refuse, like in our case, what we're seeing happen is they still end up, kidnapping the child under the color of law, to where the child eventually gets adopted out. People never see their child, or very rarely, without extreme restrictions that they should not be subject to, because like I said before, there's no crime. And so that's kind of an opening of where we're at. We have not been able to find that attorney, but we're still looking, and we're we're building that network and making some good connections. And so we know that in going forward and through great platforms such as yourselves and others, that we continue to highlight that and getting the word out. And there's going to be some new things that are also going to be rolling out that we're going to be a part of to help facilitate the visibility. And so we just encourage you to continue doing what you're doing, and people to come forward and to share their stories, then connect with us, because we feel that we have what it's going to take, but we need the people. We need Mr. and Mrs. America out there watching that. Someone else is not going to solve our problem.
Right.
What I say sometimes to people is, if we can identify the problem, like I was saying before, in respect that's common to all of us, and address that, we will get the resolution to our individual problems. And so that's kind of our objective in a nutshell, that if we can attack the problem common to all of us, then we will get that remedy and justice and the returns of our children. And so, but it takes each one doing their part.
Mhm.
And you know, whatever little gift or talent you have, it could just be something as simple as sharing the information. It could be, but really, there's nothing more powerful than your presence in your locale, and joining together with a friend or two or three and growing it out from there. So, you know, a lot of cases, Mary Ann, people also have issues with funding. And so part of what we're going to try to do is part of our operation, is we're going to try to be an engine where we can generate our own revenue. Terry's trying to make, is going to be making the Let Our Children Go operation a 501c3, but the H3FC, we're looking at maybe making that like an engine where we can, you know, generate revenue to help people, you know, in needs, because there are people who are subject to some real hardship out there when they get thrust in the abyss of this. And so that's a little bit about our vision and what we're aiming to do. And like I said, there's going to be some exciting things that are also going to be rolling out. Maybe we can revisit that with you in the future. So I know you wanted to go through a few other topics, and so I'm going to turn it back over to you to kind of lead us into that.
Okay, well, going back to, I think it was last year. I don't know if you remember the DCS workers that were fired over the professional kidnapper T-shirts. Do you remember that?
Yes, in Arizona.
Right, in Arizona, and on the back of the T-shirt, it said, "Do you know where your children are?" And that's when I blew a gasket.
That
Um,
was so revealing of them.
yeah, and, they were also all overweight, sorry, but the caseworkers I've had were obese. Anyway, I'm sorry, I know that's unprofessional, but, we were gonna talk about, you know, these, deprivation of rights, and even these caseworkers don't know the laws. They're not trained. They should be abolished and have something else put in its place, with people that have psychology degrees, people of a higher caliber, and
Right.
maybe weigh a little bit less. I don't know what the answer is, but that has got to stop. When I saw that, I was just I don't know.
Yeah, that was definitely, I like to share that story,
Mhm.
because that's them basically throwing it in the face of the families that they're taking children from. I mean, it's
Right.
just horrendous that they would even have the nerve to do that.
Yeah, that's pretty grotesque. When I saw it, because they were all in a line walking down, and I don't know who took this picture, how they got a hold of it, how they exposed it, but I'm glad they did.
That was in Arizona, and Arizona, as you probably know, is one of the worst states for this issue.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's nothing like them just actually telling you what it is they're really doing, right? Via a t-shirt.
Right,
I mean,
right.
this is crazy, but I mean, we know that's the
Mm.
case, right? I mean, this is kidnapping under the color of law, and in our first interview with you, we did touch upon that, as far as, you know, what that is and
Mhm.
what it means, what this color of law means, and for people who may not know, basically, it's people within our system of government who are using the power of government in an unlawful way,
Right.
and to take our kids. And where it's unlawful, and Terry sometimes talk about the unlawful aspect of it, is that unless you have a contract with someone in the state regarding the oversight of your parenting right to parent your child, they don't have a place to proceed against you in a civil way, in a civil manner, because there's no contract between you and the state. The only contract we do have with the state, so to speak, is our social contract that's common to all of us, and that's our Constitution.
Right.
You know, the Constitution of our respective states and the United States, which is, you know, what we entrust them with to secure. And so one of the key charters of that is to investigate and prosecute crimes. And so where you're taking a child without there being a contract or a crime, they are the ones committing a crime of kidnapping. And then they're doing it fraudulently under the disguise of that civil aspect to take our money. And then they're denying us our right to civil remedy and criminal justice. And we just completed a little survey about the immunity. I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about that because we spoke about that toward the end of our first interview with you. But many times people, when they connect with an or they try to get an attorney, what they're told is, oh, well, they have immunity. You know, caseworkers have immunity. You can't sue the judge because the judge has immunity. You can't sue the police officer because they have immunity. And when in reality, and I think I mentioned this last time, and it's and I'm going to say it again, but it's Title 42. This is a federal law. Title 42, Chapter 21, Section 1981. Encourage people to look it up. Title 42, Chapter 21, Section 1981. Type it into your favorite browser. It'll come right up, and just read it. And it identifies, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it for you right here, just so that we can get it on the record. But it basically says that all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, who would that be? That would include everyone that I just mentioned, right? If you're a judge, you're a person subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Police officer, caseworker. Says all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts, to sue. Okay, it says that we have a right to sue. So if we have a right to sue, then somebody can be sued, right? And it doesn't exempt anyone in this federal law. And it says to be parties, give evidence and to the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and property as is enjoyed by white citizens. Now, this was something that came out of the civil rights era, okay? So this was an inherent right that was recognized, but they were extending that out via, you know, the outcome of what Dr. Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement back in the late 60s and 70s. And so, and it says, and shall be subject to like punishment, pains, and penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions of every kind, and to no other. So for all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States, that would mean within all 50 states, to be subject to punishment, like punishment, pains, and penalties, and etc. That would include criminal justice. So if someone in our system of government is committing a crime, whether it be a judge or a police officer or a caseworker or anyone else in respect to what we're talking about, or even lack of equal protection for the parental alienated folks, you know, because we have a right to equal protection under the 14th Amendment. And this federal law ties into the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause in Section 1. I encourage people to look that up. And so where this 1981 law establishes the right to sue or to be subject to criminal justice actions, it identifies that as a right. So that is something inherent to every one of us as per our birthright as a United States citizen, or when we're naturalized a United States citizen. And so that is not something that government can issue, and it's not something that they can take away. And so under the 14th Amendment, the equal protection of the laws, they cannot, exempt people with immunity from civil remedy or criminal justice. And yet this is what's happening. And this is a key part of our problem right now, that many people who don't know this will walk in and they get told this by an attorney because we have these state laws in just about all 50 states saying that they have immunity. And I'm going to read one from the state of Kentucky, just so your audience can see or to hear is KRS 620030. And basically what it does is it says that anyone acting upon reasonable cause in the making of a report in good faith shall have immunity from any liability, civil or criminal, that might otherwise be incurred or imposed. Okay, now that's just an example in the state of Kentucky, and this is pretty common language in all 50 states. And people can type in their favorite browser, just look up immunity for child welfare actions, and it'll come up, and just put in your state, and it'll show it. And you can look at it yourself. And so what this is this very thing we're talking about here is actually a deprivation of rights under the color of law. In 1981, that I was just referring to, actually in paragraph C, it states protection against impairment. And it says, the rights protected by this section are protected against impairment by non-governmental discrimination and impairment under color of state law. Okay, so this would rise to the level of a Title 18, Chapter 13, Section 241 and 242 crime of being deprived of our right to civil remedy and criminal justice. And where this is important is that when these things happen, it keeps these bad people that we're being subjected to now from doing this to us. It provides a check and balance on that, because if we can sue for damages, or we have criminal justice and they're punished, they're going to think twice about not following certain laws, like was the case with us, and like, felony forgery, the conspiracy to kidnap our kids, and falsification of medical records, and on and on. And we reported all of these crimes. And with our timeline, Mary Ann, what happened was, as we said in the last time we talked, we reported all of these crimes up to every law enforcement agency available to us within the state of Kentucky for the state crimes, all the way up through the federal level. And during our time, we had been to the FBI several times, and we documented all of this. And we had all of this hard evidence that we were giving them, and we could never get anyone to move in respect to investigating or contacting us for interviews so we could disclose more of our evidence. And so in May of 2018, we met with U.S. Attorney and an assistant U.S. Attorney in West Virginia. And when we went there, we met with them for about an hour and a half, and we had a victims advocate, and then we had an HHS investigator there. And we spent an hour and a half disclosing all of our evidence of the crimes. And this U.S. Attorney was very nice and accommodating, and he was convinced enough to take our information and forward it back to Kentucky. And in the end, the state of Kentucky did nothing with it for various reasons that we don't have time to probably talk about right now. But basically, we just got a little bit of an email saying basically that they had reviewed it, and I knew there was no way that they reviewed it. But what happened after that is we continued up the chain. I think I may have mentioned this, went all the way to the highest levels of the Department of Justice, and we were sending crime reports to our representatives, Senator Rand Paul, and then trying to reach the White House. Now, here's where this segues in to an even bigger problem that we're just beginning to bring out into the public arena that we had reported. But when we were looking at our timeline and all the people that we had been to throughout 2018, strangely, something happened on January 7th, 2019, which we didn't really know at the time until maybe a few months into 2019. We were doing some research, and then we did a redress. We did a petition for redress of grievances, outlining all of the crimes. But on January 7th, 2019, there was a federal law in respect to immunity that was enacted. It was legislated throughout 2018, and it was signed into law on January 7th, 2019. And I'm going to tell you what this federal law is. It's
Wasn't it added to CAPTA?
Yeah, we think it may have been something that was added to the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act that had to come up for renewal every 2 years. And this is what we think happened, is that this was included as an amendment to that renewal every 2 years. But we have to do a little bit more research to see if that was indeed the case, but we think that's what happened because it was coming up for renewal around that time. But anyway, what happened was this federal immunity was established in 2019, and it's in Title 34 U.S. Code, and I'm going to give you the section here. Title 34 U.S. Code, Subtitle 2, Chapter 203, Section 20342. I'm going to say that one more time. Federal immunity, Title 34 U.S. Code, Chapter 203, Section 20342. And it says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, any individual making a good faith report to appropriate authorities of a suspected or known instance of child abuse or neglect, or who otherwise in good faith provides information or assistance, including medical evaluations or consultations in connection with a report, investigation, or legal intervention pursuant to a good faith report of child abuse or neglect, shall not be subject to civil liability or criminal prosecution under any federal law arising from making such report, providing such information or assistance. And then it goes on to say that it gives a presumption of good faith for these people, that any federal civil action or criminal prosecution brought against a person based on a person's reporting a suspected or known instance of child abuse or neglect, or providing information or assistance with respect to such a report, there shall be a presumption that the person acted in good faith. And then, as an additional measure, it goes even further and discourages people from even trying, in saying that if a defendant prevails in a civil action, if someone wants to even try it, then the court may award costs and reasonable attorney's fees incurred by the defendant, meaning that if someone tried, like us, to bring a suit, they could order that we would have to pay, the defendants. And so this immunity law did not exist at any point in any federal level until 2019. And so when we were reporting these crimes to these different people, these different agencies, we have questions as to what was really going on there, and that this is really just another example of a deprivation of our right under 1981 and the 14th Amendment. And so, furthermore, this also violates a core charter of our Constitution. In Article 1, Section 9, one of the powers forbidden to Congress, encourage people to type in Article 1, Section 9, and look at the powers forbidden to Congress. And it says no ex post facto or bill of attainder is to occur. It's prohibited. And so when we look at our timeline, the people that we talk to include our senator or representatives, and then all of a sudden, this 2018 thing begins to be legislated and it's enacted in 2019. And then we get no response from the agencies that we went to. We have questions. And we did a redress of this back through the Department of Justice and asked questions. We weren't accusing anybody of anything. We were just asking questions. How does this happen? Because now that they're establishing it at a federal level, that affects, in addition to the state immunity, that if you have evidence of federal crimes, they're saying, well, you're not going to have an opportunity for civil remedy or criminal justice even at the federal level for federal crimes. So that's what we were reporting was federal crimes in addition to the state crimes. And so what's happening is we are being grossly denied our rights. And this is a huge one, because why would you need immunity for any criminal if you're doing the right thing? If you're abiding by the law and we're being given due process, they would have no need for it. And so really what's happening is this rises to the level of a seditious act. And this is what we want people in your audience to share widely, because this is what's happening to us. We are being subverted in our country by a domesticated enemy within our system. And it's up to us to ask the questions and demand corrective action. And that's why it goes back to what I was saying before, because they're not listening to us individually. And we're out here to expose this because we're the ones who are funding this operation against us. And we're being hurt. Our children are being hurt. And we're being groomed and conditioned to accept a totalitarian system where we don't have any protections. And we're losing our families. We're losing our children. We're losing our freedom. And so this requires an answer. And we exercise that First Amendment right to petition for redress of grievances. That never got an answer. Well, don't we deserve an answer to our petitions? Every American should get an answer. We're paying them to secure our rights, and they're not doing it. And so all of these people that are involved in this is where when we redress this through the various channels, we got no answer. So why are we not getting an answer? And so, it points to only one thing. We have people in our system that are working to undermine and destroy us from within. Because if this is allowed to continue, this is what's happening to families. We're losing our children. We're having our livelihoods destroyed. Many people are being made homeless. We're losing our rights. We're losing our freedom. And, we're not able to pursue our happiness. And our children are then being re-educated into a way of life that is totally contrary to what our founders intended. And so we, the people, have to rise up and join together and ask these questions with a united voice. What is happening? And why is it happening? And we want it fixed because we have the evidence and just what we talked today. I mean, this should be enough to get anyone watching out of their chair and say, wait a second, that is not right. And, sedition is a federal crime. When we are being denied the protection of our laws, pursuant like our rights. I mean, that is sedition. That is a seditious conspiracy, and there's a federal crime there. And so, but the question before all Americans is, to whom do we go when we don't have anyone in our system to facilitate justice or remedy actions for us? Well, it's up to us. Look at the 14th Amendment, Section 3. No one who does these things is allowed to be within our system of government. Under the 14th Amendment, Section 3, type it into your browser and read it. No person is allowed to be a judge of any state. No person is allowed to be in Congress. You're not allowed to be president, okay, under our Constitution. And we, the people, are the ones who ensure that that happens. And we have to join together and show up and demand it, because if we don't, these people that are doing this to us are going to continue running over us like this. And it's just going to be another family. I mean, some people out there, they do great work, and we love them and the work that they do to help people in various ways. But if by some strange occurrence, someone may get their children back, they're just going to go down the street and grab 3 or 4 more from another family, and then there's that family, right? We are out here, and we want to join with people to stop it, because what's happening is it's not American. Okay, this is not American. We have closed courts. We have a handful of people who are using the power of our system that we, the people, give our power to, that's being used against us to hurt us. And this is why we have jury trials. Our founders gave us the right to a jury trial to ensure government of, by, and for the people. They gave us the right under our state constitutions to have open courts so that the people in our communities can monitor what's going on within our courts. They gag people, which is a deprivation of their First Amendment right. So people are afraid to talk about it. We're not going to stop talking about it. No one's going to deny us our First Amendment right to free speech. Do or say what you want, but we're going to live as a free people. And we encourage people to get that courage and build that courage among your fellow Americans, because we have to stand up to this. Because if we don't, and we're going to cower in fear, then we're going to be living as slaves. We're going to continue living as slaves. And so that's the big picture in respect to the immunity and the deprivations of our rights. When we talk about, the 14th Amendment, we talk about our children. Our children also have rights. They have a right to liberty. Liberty, freedom of association, freedom of, wherever, if they want to associate with their parents and be with their parents, they have a right to be with their parents. Why are you denying a child who wants to be with their mom or their dad or their mom and dad the right to have that, unless they've been convicted of a crime and are in jail and they have no family, And so this is what's happening. And, for all the folks out there who want to be care providers of children who are taken and they're in foster care or group homes, we're here to support you, because you should have, if there's a crime, you should have the right to be able to be a care provider. And, we talk about the whole foster care system, Mary Ann. It's like, when Terry and I talk about it, it's like, that should be a very rare thing. If there's no family, and so we want people to become informed, and we're learning new things, like the people who connect with us, like through your audience. I mean, we learn things, but we want to share that information too, and so we can share the information among ourselves. This is why, like I said, the work you do with this is so important, and may you be blessed going forward what you're doing. But we need to continue to get the word out, but then join together and show up, and then to raise our voices together. And that's the common thing. We're being denied our rights, and you can't do that in the United States. Okay, that's not what our country is. This is what makes America America. And if we get that taken away, what's going to make us distinct? It's just going to be a piece of paper that we just talk about. Boy, it was nice when we had that at one time. And so that's our mission. We're going to fight for that. That's what H3FC.com and the Heritage and Freedom Coalition are about. Not just in respect of the child or Title IV money theft, but all of our other constitutional rights, like our Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to free speech, to practice your religion. And, like for us, we're people of faith, and we had a strong knit faith-based home. And, this country was founded primarily on the freedom of religion and to practice the free exercise of your faith, if you want to have a faith or if you don't want to have a faith. And so we are being denied that right to practice our faith with our children. And we know other people out there who have this happen to them are also being denied that right. So that's just a couple examples, and then a few others, like the Eighth Amendment, to not be subject to cruel and unusual punishment. That's one people don't really talk about. I mean, if you haven't been convicted of a crime, how much of a cruel punishment is it to be denied access to your own child or to your own children? I mean, that's an egregious violation. And so, what's that?
The 13th.
Yeah, and then the 13th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment is one people may not be aware of, but I know many state constitutions have this, and this is one that we've been standing on, is to not be subject to involuntary servitude and or slavery. And when we talk about the deprivation of our children's right to to liberty, to be with their mom and dad if they want to be, without being convicted of a crime. But the 13th Amendment, I mean, they're being enslaved. That's slavery. When you're prohibiting someone from their basic liberty rights, you're enslaving them. Okay. I mean, we would think of slavery like what we have all been taught or come to know slavery to be, that it was some sort of a race-based thing, or but it's broader than that, and it encompasses so many other things. And but then the involuntary servitude aspect of it, just so people know, we refuse to comply with services that they wanted to force upon us because we didn't get charged with a crime. We were not convicted of a crime. And so that's one of the key responsibilities that we entrust with our system of government. And they're the only ones who can prosecute a crime, our system of government. And so when you look at the 13th Amendment, it says, except as punishment for a crime, that is expressly pointed at government, that we can't be subject to a government action involuntarily unless there's been a crime, or like I said before, a contract. And so those are a few examples that people may already be aware of, but those are a few that we're aware of. And, like I said, those are crimes that we're being denied, the right to sue, the right to criminal justice, and all these other things like jury trial. You have a right to a jury trial under the 6th and 7th Amendment and in your own state constitutions. It's there. And so we encourage people to get in there and read those things and stand on those things and join with people who want to fight for those things, like us, because that's what we're about. And if we have that, as I sit here and recall this, I remember we met with an attorney one time, and he says to us, well, what's more important, your rights or your children? And I said to him, well, if I have my rights, I'm going to have my children, right?
Right.
No, I mean, look at your Fourth Amendment, the right to be secure in your person and your house and your effects. Like for us, we've been happily married for 25 years, and our children are the effects of our marriage, they're the fruit of our marital covenant.
Mhm.
And, so we can't be denied that under the Fourth Amendment. The right to parent, I mean, even the Supreme Court, in a Supreme Court case a few years back, Troxel versus Granville,
Mhm.
acknowledged the right of parents to provide the care, custody, and control of their children. I think the case was centered around like um, equal access beyond the parent thing, but it established that parents have the exclusive right to the care, control, and possession. I like to use the word.
Mhm.
There are gifts. We have the right to oversee them. They're ours.
Mhm.
So we're being denied those basic rights. And so we even have Supreme Court case law. We have this enacted law through our legislative branch pursuant to our rights, and we're being denied all these things. And so that rises the level. We can talk about corruption, but it's really, and when it's that broad and that deep in scope, it really is more along the lines of a seditious operation under that disguise of safety and best interest, right? So,
Right.
we want to break down that that lying narrative and that disguise. And so that's just an example of the many deprivations that we, the people, have a responsibility to ensure that we secure for ourselves and our children.
I also, I hear from people, they can't find an attorney. They're asking me to find them attorney, and I couldn't even find myself an attorney. I made contact with one, ran my case past him because he had a big win before in federal court. He wouldn't take the case because he said the statutes of limitation were passed, and they were not. But yet, he obviously didn't want to take the case. And then you try to run this case yourself, and you're not a lawyer, and you're doing the best you can. And these judges or magistrates, they are not looking at evidence. I mean, even in the lower courts, even in family court, if there's a custody issue, these judges are not or don't, and they don't want to look at evidence. They have a predetermined case they already know the outcome of before you walk in that courtroom. And that's also goes up, in my opinion, to the federal level.
Yes. Yeah, that's an excellent point, because it kind of brings a thought to mind about what is the purpose of our courts? Why do we have judges there, and why do we have juries? I mean, is that there's either two aggrieved parties, or there's an injured party, like pursuant to a criminal action. Why do we allow them to arbitrarily just dismiss cases without making a ruling?
Mhm.
I mean, is that really constitutional? You talk about the statute of limitations. You know, uh, where's that in the Constitution?
Right.
And we can talk about that in respect to, well, they'll say like, fraud vitiates everything, and maybe fraud is a little bit more, has a longer so-called statute of limitations, maybe some of the other so-called felonies. Like we identified well over 50 felonies and maybe twice as many misdemeanors that were reported with irrefutable evidence that we could show the picture on.
Mhm.
But really, it begs the question: it's like, well, the two things, like in respect to the court system, we can understand that maybe where a judge might want to turn something back, and so you need to fix this or fix that or refile it. But to just sit there and dismiss a case, and then to leave you hanging after you spend money and all the time and putting together a case, and or spending a huge amount of money on an attorney, I mean, our court system exists because we want a ruling, we want a decision, right? And then we can appeal the decision. So, across so many different areas, whether it be in the executive branches, the failure to investigate and prosecute crimes, and the establishment of these deprivations of rights, immunity things that are totally unlawful, or the failure of our representatives to rein them in and hold them in check, and move them out when they're acting lawlessly, to take those actions. No, we have failures across all three systems of our state and federal government. and it's being played out in the most harmful way in respect to our families and our children, at the heart of who we are as a country.
Mhm.
I think there was a Soviet leader a few years back in the time of the Cold War era. It may have been Lenin. I think I saw a quote. It said, "Well, destroy the family and destroy the country."
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's true, because that's what's happening in the United States right now. And so it's time for us to wake up real fast,
But
get
yes.
smart real fast, and join together on what we know, and learn something new. I mean, Marianne, you do great work, and people can take in a lot of information from a lot of different people. And when you see that common theme being played out, be like, well, who can I join with, or what can I learn, or what can I share with somebody, and say,
Mhm.
hey, go here, look at this, see what's going on. Because I can tell you, for the people who haven't had this happen to you, don't think it may not come around. Because if someone has some sort of animosity towards you, um, whether it be your religious beliefs, your political beliefs, your homeschooling beliefs, or if they just don't like you, all they got to do is make that call on the CPS, and they're going to come and take your kids.
And they
And they're
will.
gonna, right?
Well,
And they're going to
oh,
right.
yes, I'm
Go
sorry, I
ahead.
didn't
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I even posted, a podcast similar to what we're talking about, and I posted it to a neighborhood page because I thought everybody should know about this, and the admin responded, you know, the I know, I don't know how she put it, something like, "We really don't wanna see stuff like this on our page," and I typed back, "But this can happen to you. I I'm trying to warn you." But she suspended me, I couldn't type or post anything on that page for 8 days. This is what they do to you. People that just they don't wanna hear it. They don't wanna hear it, or they wanna be ostriches that put their heads in the sand until it happens to them.
Right. And, part of our operation is we want to build enough of a support structure and network to where um, it'd be like one of these, who are you going to call? Right.
Mhm.
So for people who don't know what's going on, or maybe they could just do like a quick reference. I mean, we have a right to have citizen action groups. We have neighborhood watch groups.
Mhm.
Just because someone's wearing a uniform doesn't mean they're going to be a good person. They're doing lawful things. I mean, we have evidence of that.
Right.
And so we have a responsibility to each other and our communities to know what's going on. And we want to have people that can, at least someone that they can call and say, hey, I've got people out here. They don't have any paperwork. Like in our case, they didn't have any paperwork. They're saying, just open the door and give us your kids. Well, I mean, we as a community need to have a right to maybe show up and ask some questions to see what's going on,
Mhm.
right? If you knew someone was in your neighborhood who wanted to break in your house in the middle of the night and steal your kids, or to steal something else from you, certainly that's why we have these signs in some communities, community action group, right? And
Mhm.
people who are going to keep the eye out for each other. Because if you can prevent them from doing this, you're going to be a lot better off than after they take your kids. You know.
Right.
So, and then the other thing, Marianne, I want to mention real quick, because you clued me in on something else. For people out there who don't have kids, this same type of an operation is happening in what's called adult protective services.
Mhm.
And it's a very little talked about, and I'm sure you've heard about it, but
Mhm.
and that they can someone can make an allegation against you as an adult that you're mentally unstable, or you might have PTSD, or you're this or you're that. They're going to show up and they're going to say, we need to, for your own safety, we need to put you over here in this institution. They'll get people on drugs, and then they just run them down a whole line of things where eventually they don't even allow the families or the parents to be a care provider for whether it's a legitimate thing or not. And they basically hold an adult hostage, and they eventually confiscate their assets and leave them destitute, same way
Right.
that they're doing with families. And so it's two different kind of an operations with many of the same functions and outcomes. And so don't deceive yourself, Mr. and Miss America, to think that there are not bad people out there who wouldn't do this to you for a variety of reasons, because there are. And we
Mhm.
need to be our brother and sister's keeper, and a good neighbor and a good American, a responsible citizen, and exercise our stake in this, because it's all going to come back to us in some way. I mean, we talk about who's funding it. We're funding it.
Right.
you know, and, when you take a look at how big our national debt is, I'd be interested to see what the correlation would be going back to ASFA
Oh,
and
yes.
how much Title IV money and the amount of billions of dollars that have been flowing out. Who knows where that money's going? We want to know where that money's going. I think we deserve to have an audit. You know, where's that money going? How many of these cases were criminal in nature versus fraudulent, or there was no crime or contract? These are the kind of questions I think that we need to be asking and demand that we get an answer to. That we want an audit. We want to know what's going on with our money. And
Well,
if it's being right, go ahead.
you go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
No, and then if it's being done fraudulently, and even with people who have already had this happen to them, their kids, we demand our money back. We have a right to have our money back in addition to our kids.
Especially when most of the calls going in are false allegations,
That's right.
and that they're putting through our tax dollars and putting time into, even if it's done vengefully. Like, you know how these people, they get divorced and then someone calls CPS on the other one so they can get the kids.
Right.
And this is all human trafficking,
That's right.
flat out. But I don't know why we're even entertaining false allegations. I think if you're going to, if anyone's going to call anything in, I really think they should be forced to give their name.
Yes.
Because if you're not lying, then there should be no problem giving your name. I think that would just totally cut down on all false allegations and save people a lot of headaches.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
I don't know.
In criminal trials, we have a right to face our accuser.
Right.
And again, it should only be happening if there's a crime. You want to, if child abuse and neglect, and this is another thing,
Mhm.
Mary Ann, and I appreciate you just leading us along with these things, because all these important pieces are coming to mind. But another part of it is when we talk about abuse and neglect, like in respect to a criminal matter, like if you're stealing or if you're robbing somebody or you're going to murder somebody, that's a pretty well-defined crime, right?
Mhm.
So what is the defined crime for abuse and neglect? I mean, what is that? Okay, but in respect to like non-criminal action, which is what many people are subjected to, this fraudulent operation, none of these things are defined. What does that mean? Does that mean am I being neglectful of my children um, if they only have 2 gallons of milk in the refrigerator for my 7 kids because I haven't been to the store yet?
Mhm.
Does that mean that if I'm going to if you're going to say I'm in a dependent situation and you're going to take my kids away from me because I'm in dependency, how much money do I need to make to avoid being in dependency? I mean, there's got to be something that a guideline that an American go by, like in other crimes, like, well, if I do this, this is going to happen, right?
Right.
So therefore, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be in that situation. Whereas like with parents and children, it's like there's just someone exercising arbitrary power and defining it as they go along while
Mhm.
they hold on to our kids and destroy our livelihoods.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We can't have that and call ourselves a free country or a free people. How do you pursue your happiness like that? It really is a terror to tyranny campaign. And so we have to stop this. Okay.
Mhm.
This is just contrary. To everything American. And so, it's look, if you want to have a crime, or you define that, okay, in
Mhm.
respect to child welfare actions, because look, I agree, children do need to have protection, but so do parents, okay,
Right.
pursuant to a criminal matter. So give us all due process and charge us with a crime. Let us go before the American people and have government of, by, and for the people, not this pseudo false operation just for the sake of stealing kids and subjecting them to different abuses and then stealing our money and destroying otherwise good, decent
Mhm.
parents, and give the parental alienated equal protection unless there's been a crime involved.
Mhm.
That's a simple answer to that. And, kind of raises the question. If, I had someone ask me, well, should there be jury trials in respect to like a divorce or a relationship thing? Well, think about that. Should there be? We see a lot of situations where there's a lot of anger between two parties, and it's like, well, who do you believe, right? It's like, well, unless there's a crime, let's get back to the 50-50 thing. Okay, if you can't work out your relationship, for the good of both parties and the child, give them equal access. That's just kind of where we're at with it. And unless, of course, you can show that, yeah, there is some sort of either real abuse or another crime that has really occurred. I mean, that's just one other thing that we think would be an amicable solution to many of those issues. And things are just allowed to run down a very dark path where a lot of people get hurt in a long running thing in various ways. And so even that type of thing is very destructive. Now, I'm open to other input on that. But as I've thought about it, that's just one other thing that sometimes we get confronted with. And I think, well, the 50-50 thing, unless of course there's a reason why there shouldn't be 50-50. And we know some people don't want to be a parent to their child. And so, that's a whole different thing. If you don't want to be a parent to your child, well, you have a right to not to give up that right if you don't want to be a parent to your child, I mean, so but anyway, back to the bigger problems. We have got to re-secure our rights in this country. Okay.
Well, I
And
know,
think it plays
like
out.
earlier you asked me, like, did I call anyone? Like, did I call the FBI and let them know what was going on? Okay, so I just thought of that, and I did call someone, but it wasn't in the FBI. And I said, yeah, my case was, I was exonerated of 2 back-to-back indications of emotional abuse, but still all this damage was done. And the response I got was, well, it looks like, the system worked for you. You got exonerated. So, everything's fine. It's like, no, you came into my house. You basically lit a fire in my living room and then you walked out. And there's no repercussions for these people, these caseworkers that are out of control.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Terri have some of the floor
I think
here.
you mentioned that the other day about, justice and remedy. And I think that's, what you're referring to, just because you maybe get them out of your life, that doesn't mean that, for one thing, the threat of them coming back into your life is still there, right? If they aren't held accountable. And then the damage that they cause, the trauma and the wounding that they cause to the parents and the children, even when the children are left in the home or returned home, and the trauma and the terror that the children and the parents live with when there's a knock at the door. Is that them coming back?
Oh, yes.
And so if they're not held accountable, like in your situation, what you were saying, that's not justice. That's not remedy for what happened if they acted.
And that's the response you get. I mean, thank God I was exonerated, but it really didn't do me any good. I still lost my career. Everything still went down the toilet. And they just are like, well, let's move on.
Right. Yeah. And I know of a case where the family got the child back, and I think they were going to try to hire an attorney, and I think the response was, well, basically you should just be happy you got your kid back. We're too busy with these other, issues, I guess. And so yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about that, about the attorneys and why they won't step up. And
Right.
I have my opinion on maybe why, some things don't. I think maybe a lot of attorneys that aren't in the family law field, I think maybe they really don't know some of the things that are going on in the child welfare system and the family courts. I think maybe they just are unaware, and when they're approached with it, it's sort of overwhelming for them because that's not their specialty of law. And so even though they may think, oh yeah, that they can't be doing that, they shouldn't be doing that, but that's not their specialty, and they don't really have the capacity to, or they don't feel like they have the capacity to take it on. And then the attorneys that are in family law and know the statutes, and I think that part of the problem may just be that is their bread and butter. That's their source of income, are these cases that they have to work through. And I still have hope that there are attorneys out there, and this is one of the things that I've been trying to do, is to gather attorneys together that seem to be somewhat constitutionally or constitutionally minded, trying to educate them about how the system is operating, and hopefully maybe bring them together into a team effort. because I think that if we could get something before SCOTUS, that there could be a ruling that this system is unconstitutional. So like when Mark was talking about earlier about individual cases and people that help individual cases, and we know all about that, you know, trying to help one family get their child back, and that's important, but it's like triage. You know, it's like if you had a massacre happening outside and you've got wounded coming in one after another, and you're trying to help them instead of stopping the gunman that's out there shooting everybody. So it's like we can do the triage on the wounded, but it's like we've got to stop where it's what's causing the wounds. And so it is unconstitutional. It is inhumane. It's a human rights issue. This Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So these state laws and these acts that they put into place, you know, CAPTA and ASPA, and these unconstitutional things that can be reversed. And so part of our hope in doing interviews and giving people our contact and asking people to reach out is so that we can get the numbers to make it a issue. We had an attorney, a very prominent attorney, I guess you could say, you know, on a well-known case in the state of Kentucky, because our case is out of Kentucky. And the response that we got from him basically in the end was something along the lines of, I think you have more of a political issue than a legal issue. And in a way, it was sort of a cop-out, I think, but in the way, he was sort of right, because there is not enough outrage and outspokenness from people to put enough pressure on the system to I don't want to say correct itself, because some people think it's working the way it's supposed to, you know, the way they want it to. But, you know, we want to be, you were talking about reaching out to the community page and their response. And I can totally get that and why they would say that, because some people, they want to, you know, they don't want to have to think about it, cognitive dissonance or whatever, you know, they don't want to have to deal with the trauma, thinking about it, second degree trauma, right? And so, but people, oh, I know what I was going to say. I lost it there for a minute. There's enough people that this has happened to. You know, yes, we want to educate those other people and let them know this can happen to you, and you need to join with us. It's sort of like the civil rights movement we were talking about earlier. You know, even though it was the community, the Black community that was being affected, they had other races and stuff that joined with them because they saw what was. And so there's a lot of people that they just aren't aware yet. So we want to keep raising awareness and joining people together and come together and present that united front, so that the people in power will have to listen. You know, so it's important that we keep talking about it and to let people know that they're not alone. There was a story that I posted the other day about a family that had been separated when the child was young, and then they were able to be, you know, they found each other and, you know, were able to try to start building, you know, that relationship after. And yeah, there's a lot of trauma and wounds there that people have to go through, and we have to deal with that with our own children that are now, you know, becoming adults. But we just want people to know that there is hope, that hopefully your child does make it out of the system. And even if you don't get them back, you know, before they turn 18, they're, you know, you just, you know, stay hopeful and stay connected and join with other people as a support system, you know, because you need, people need that. You need that to deal with the trauma and to hold out for when your children are able to reconnect with you and be there to help them with their healing. So, but, you know, as far as the attorneys go, yeah, if there's any listening out there or any paralegals or, you know, yeah, reach out to us. I've been trying to get interviews with them, you know, get their perspective on things. We've done a couple with Sylvia over at Rescue the Fosters. We had Sean McMillan on, another attorney out there in California. We've got more that have agreed to interview. And so, you know, if you just want to do an interview and let us know what you think about the system. People can reach out to us.
Do you think that some of these attorneys that don't want to get involved, they know that CPS can come knocking on their door as well?
Yeah,
And maybe they don't want to get involved because that's their fear.
you're right. And they may not have young children, but they
Mhm.
may have grandchildren.
Or worse, they,
And
could be
it may
worse.
not even be their
Loss of
children. I mean,
life.
look at Nancy Schaefer,
Uh-huh.
but you have to come to a point where,
Can't be afraid.
you're going to take a stand on something. And I think you're right. I think some of them think, oh, maybe that would be a worthy cause, but no, I'll let maybe somebody else to step up to the plate. So we need people to step up. We can't, all go back, go to law school and,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we need courageous attorneys that are willing to work together and come together and let's do some brainstorming and figure out how to stop this system, because we don't want to just do triage
Mhm.
on every family that comes through. We
Right.
want to have something ruled on and put in place to stop this system that's doing this. And there's enough people out there that know it's a problem. I mean, since we've been involved with this going on 7 years, we've seen the people become more aware. And, I mean, at least in my sphere, I feel like people are like, when you mentioned CPS, I mean, I think a lot of people now are like, so they know what's going on. And
Mhm.
people that have, had to deal with family court because, even if CPS wasn't involved, but they've had to deal with family court because of a divorce situation or whatever. And so they know. And then it's the foster children are growing up, the adoptees are growing up, they're becoming adults now, they're speaking out about what happened to them. So
Mhm.
we've got the family members, the parents and the grandparents. Now we've got the children becoming adults that were in the foster system, that were adopted and weren't in the greatest situation. And even foster parents, the foster parents that want to help the kids and, may realize that once they get into that system of helping, that maybe they're not really able to help the child like they want to help the child because they've got, CPS in their face telling them,
Mhm.
you've got to keep this kid on this drug and you've got to do this. And then the workers like Sylvia from Rescue the Foster. So you've got
Mhm.
these people, they're waking up and coming out. And I just want people to know they're watching, that if you're, you're in these systems and you're a foster parent or someone working in the CPS system, past or present, I mean, just reach out to us and we can get you connected with different avenues that, you may not be interested in one aspect, but there may be another aspect that
Mhm.
you could help with, because every piece is important, every person is important,
Mhm.
like Mark was saying. I mean, I've got people, I'll put out a post and I don't know if they're doing anything else outside of that, but they'll just start tagging other people. And I mean, you never know what little thing you do is going to have a ripple effect to bring about a great, a bigger change. So we
Definitely.
appreciate everybody that's out there and listening.
Yeah, join with us. We're here for you.
Join. Yes, please,
Yeah,
uh,
if
because
you want to be a movement that moves, it begins with your 2 feet first. Okay.
well, I had interviewed, Air Force veteran Chad Farley, I think it was 2 days ago, and he spoke before the General Assembly in Tennessee, along with his 12-year-old son. He made some roundabout for, like, a whole year in either with an abusive relative or then in foster care, and the kid was talking, he would pause after a sentence and say, "This was not in my best interest." I don't know if you saw him speak.
No,
Oh,
I
I
didn't.
have it in the podcast notes. Yeah, and, he spoke so brilliant, and I had to I ended up with his father, who was great as well because he spoke. But the thing is with these general assemblies, they only give you 2 minutes to talk, and then they're interrupting you.
I heard somebody one time say, and I don't know if they all agree to this, but if you take a bunch of people with you and then like if you have 5 people and you have one spokesperson and then everybody can give their 2 minutes to that one person, so then the person can speak for a longer amount of time. I mean, I don't know if some
Yeah,
places would be like, oh no, you're not going to be able to, but that may be a thing for people too. If you want to try to have like a spokesperson in your
right.
local area, You get 10 of you, 5 of you, or 10 of you, and give your 2 minutes to that one person and let them go up there and lay it out to them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but again, growing the numbers, start with 4, start with 2, and then try to grow it to 4. Meet in a restaurant, meet in a coffee shop, meet at a library,
Right.
and get connected with us because we have connections to other people, and build those trusts and then grow it out from there. I mean, you can grow that exponentially pretty quickly. But we need those helpers. And Marianne, before you wrap this up and close it out, we appreciate you again giving us this.
I appreciate
I just want
you.
to make everyone aware that if you do get your child back, or whether it be at 18 or through some exceptional circumstance after they've been taken, or you get back what was taken away from you, as long as this system continues to exist as it is and functioning as it is, they will come back after your children as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And for the people who are in this and know the pain, is that something that you would be content with in allowing your child, when they become an adult and have kids of their own, to watch your own grandchildren to be taken like that after you've already been through it? We've seen people who have been subjected to that. So it does happen. And that's the additional risk. And so that's why we just encourage everybody. This is something we have to address for the sake of our posterity, not just for ourselves in the present time, but into the future. We have to stop it. It's on our watch to do it. If not us now, then who and when?
Now,
so thank you again, Marianne.
But how can people reach you if they have any questions?
Yeah, I'll let Terri close.
The best way to reach us is through email, and that's at LetOurChildrenGo@protonmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't jump off. Slam the Gavels, a podcast, help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Terri and Mark Stemann in the future. Going to have them back on, and other exciting guests. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.